Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining our No Trust, No Team, Building Trust in a Virtual Setting webinar. To hear today's presentation, please turn on your computer speakers or dial into 877-201-7923. During today's presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. Please feel free to enter any questions you may have throughout today's presentation in the Q&A pod displayed on the left-hand side of the meeting room window. I will now turn it over to our presenter for today, Rick Lepsinger with OnPoint Consulting. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. It's great that you could join us today. As you know, my name's Rick Lepsinger. I'll be your presenter for today's session. I am the author of 5 books on leadership and organizational effectiveness. My most recent book is called Virtual Team Success, a practical guide for working and leading from a distance. And today's topic, building and sustaining trust in a virtual setting, is based on our study of 48 virtual teams worldwide, and to try to understand why some managers are better virtual leaders than others, and why some virtual teams are more effective than others. And we'll share a little bit of those findings and the results of that with you today. We have 3 objectives, 3 main areas we're going to cover for today's presentation. We're going to talk about the 4 components of trust. Trust is more than just suspending concern or disbelief. You really can focus on 4 key levers to be able to build and sustain trust with your colleagues and team members. You'll also have an opportunity to think a little bit about your strengths and areas of development when it comes to building trust in a virtual setting, and we'll give you some strategies, some practical tips and guidelines to be able to build and sustain trust. And by the way, the tips and pointers we'll be sharing with you will certainly be appropriate in a geographically distributed setting, but we'll also be talking about building trust in general. So there are some polls that were available to you in the opening, and just to take a look and just see where people are. If you haven't completed the poll, just take a moment to do that right now. The one on the left was the number of people in your primary virtual team, and it looks like we have a range, although there are quite a few people that are up in that over 10 range. The reason why I'm asking that question, just of general interest, is the larger the team, the more difficult it is just for communication in general and for building trust more specifically. Just as a little side note, if your team has 13 people on it, it takes 78 interactions for everybody to have contact with everybody else on the team. And that definitely has an impact on building relationships and building trust. And then over on the right-hand side, the level of trust among the members of teams. It's great to see people answering honestly. The polls are anonymous, so we appreciate the honesty. Those of you who have moderate, low, or very low, we're going to talk specifically about what you can do to get it up there. Those of you who are high or very high, that's great. And the challenge now is to maintain these high levels of trust and the perception of trustworthiness among the members of your team and with your colleagues in general. So we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. So this whole idea of trust, and in terms of the role trust plays and why trust is important, I'd like to invite everyone to answer the question that's in that polling question on the bottom of the screen. Why do you think trust is important? Why do you need to have high levels of trust overall? I'll say a few words about why we're collecting that information from people as well. Again, you can see from the cartoon up here that trust really is a foundational element. It's really a prerequisite for effective teamwork and communication. If you want people to share information, if you want people to have straightforward conversations, if you want to include and be inclusive, trust is really the prerequisite. And it really is also a prerequisite for lots of other management and leadership interactions. So what we know is that the impact of trust, it boosts work engagement, It leads to increased performance, personal initiative, proactive behavior are also at greater levels. So it really does have far-ranging impact on people and teams. But here's the current situation. And those of you who work on virtual teams have a sense of that as well. A study was done, 600 respondents. 81% reported that their greatest challenge is establishing rapport and trust in a virtual setting. Now, what contributes to that? 46% never met the people who are on their virtual team face-to-face, and 30% only meet once a year. Now, again, this is significant. When you're co-located, you have spontaneous, impromptu, informal opportunities to connect, to build relationships, to build trust. In a virtual setting, that becomes much more difficult. And the impact of that, you can see that the effect it has, because of the lower levels or the difficulty in building trust, members of virtual teams tend to report that managing conflict, making decisions, and expressing their opinion is much more difficult. So trust becomes a real fundamental aspect of the of being able to work effectively as a team. And just to take a look at some of the things that you folks have put in around why it's important, I think you've captured a number of things around effective communication. Just to take a look at some trends there as well. Communication seems to be one of the key trends. Team performance, transparency. Yeah, a lot of the things people are saying seem to come down to communication, transparency, and overall team performance, which I definitely agree with overall. So here you'll see some barriers. What gets in the way of being able to build trust? And there's a number of them. One is this lack of face-to-face contact. Now, the lack of face-to-face contact impacts communication. Without the visual cues, there's much greater opportunity for misunderstandings, for miscommunication. The lack of familiarity, just getting to know people as you would if you were co-located. In addition, in a virtual setting, cliques tend to form, subgroups tend to form, where you may have groups of people distributed around the globe who bond together because they are co-located and tend to treat other members of the team who are not physically present as outsiders. Processes are also a critical component of effective virtual work, and poor processes or the lack of processes for sharing information and for making decisions can inadvertently leave people out of the conversation, have them feel excluded, and erode feelings of trust, not through any intentional behavior, but just because processes are not in place to pull people in, and conflicting goals and priorities. Now, that's true face-to-face as well, but it tends to make it difficult if you believe someone else is focused on goals or outcomes that are in conflict with yours. It's more difficult to be able to get aligned towards some common goal overall. So in the poll, let's see where you folks are in terms of the barriers. It's fairly well distributed. The lack of effective processes has a slight edge, and that's not unusual at all. Processes are critical for effective virtual team performance, and it facilitates relationship building, and it facilitates the building of trust overall. So what you're really looking for here is trying to leverage technology, let's say shared space where you can post documents where people can get them anytime, shared calendars so you know where people are and are able to include them in meetings. Dealing with time zone differences is also a problem in terms of being inclusive, but the process can help make sure people who need to be included are included. Lack of familiarity, which is kind of one of the second highest, is also a key challenge. And here we'll talk about what you need to do to replicate the interactions of a face-to-face world when you are geographically distributed. So let's talk a little bit about the role of trust, and then I'll also talk a bit about the factors around building trust. What we know from our study is that top-performing virtual teams had much higher levels of task-based trust. And task-based trust is basically the belief that people will do their job. They'll fulfill their commitment. The more challenging aspect of trust in a virtual setting was the interpersonal side. Now, it's not impossible to address that issue, but it's much more difficult for all the reasons that we've been talking about. So what are some examples? What does it look like when there's a high degree of trust among the members of your team or among your colleagues? Well, you have greater degree of transparency in the sharing of information, stronger relationships and feelings of membership overall, the perception of credibility in that people can be reliable and they're speaking the truth and they understand what they're doing, and the feelings of collaboration, or the idea that people are willing and able to work and collaborate together. When there's low levels of trust, again, as you've all mentioned before, communication is very difficult. Not only are you getting information, but can you count on the information? Tends to be a culture of blame with a lot of finger pointing in terms of who's doing what and when. Conflicts tend to go unresolved. Now, again, in a virtual setting, you may not even be aware of conflicts, but it's also much easier to ignore or avoid the conflict when you're not co-located. A lack of people fulfilling commitments overall, and the silo mentality, not seeing the group as a single team, but rather focusing on me versus the we aspect of it. So as a virtual leader or as a member of a virtual team, there are certain things you need to be on the lookout for. And in a virtual setting, you need to be deliberate and proactive about keeping these things in sight. You're trying to identify these factors before the lack of trust becomes too ingrained and becomes chronic. So team members referring to themselves as we, not referring to themselves as we, focusing more on I, the silos and subgroups developing, and we'll talk about a technique to address that. People are not sharing information or including people in the process, and you notice micromanaging, either by other team members or team leaders because of a lack of confidence that things are going to be handled well. In addition to that, you'll see that conflicts go unresolved. Team members are openly negative and openly critical with each other. You'll pick up signs that others don't regard the commitments of their colleagues as credible and legitimate, and you'll see lower levels of productivity and or missed deadlines overall. So this is sort of your checklist, things to keep a lookout for in a deliberate, proactive way to catch them early, nip them in the bud. So we've spent a little bit of time talking about the signs of distrust, the barriers to trust. Let's see, I have a couple of true-false questions. Let's see where you folks are. Here's the first one. To avoid information overload, it's best to communicate with team members only on work-related issues. Let's see where people are. Okay, there's a lot of people who haven't voted yet, but they're coming in now. All right, at this point, we've got a pretty good response. I'll give you a couple more seconds to see if we can get a few more folks in there. Okay, this is good. We got a nice response so far. Many people, the majority of you, have picked false, and that's correct. I was going to say true. That's actually correct, that you do want to avoid information overload. The problem is that if the only time I talk to you or interact with you is about work, that's not the basis for building strong relationships and for building trust. You also need to replicate what would happen in a co-located environment and be able to engage with people around non-work-related issues. Here's the second question. use of video conferencing is a good way to facilitate trust building. And let's see where you guys are with that. I'll give you a moment to wait till we get to at least, yeah, we have more than half the votes in. Okay, that's good. There are still a few coming in. In this case, the use of video is a great tool to facilitate trust building, and primarily because it addresses the issue of the lack of visual cues. It allows you to connect. It puts a face with a name, and it allows you to pick up on the visual cues. The challenge here is around getting people to use video. There's two reasons why people don't like to use video. One is they don't like the way they look. It kind of distorts their view, or they're wearing their pajamas and they're working at home and don't want to be seen. But the other is that you can't multitask. When you're on video, I actually have to attend to what you're saying, and you can't, you can see me multitasking. So that becomes a bit of a challenge in the use of video and why people avoid it. Here's our third and last question. People are more likely to inadvertently exclude virtual team members and colleagues from decisions that affect them than when they work from the same location. And let's see, do you believe that to be true or false? Okay. All right, good. So we'll just wait another moment for a few more to come in. All right, there's a little bit more variance on the responses here, but in general, this tends to be true, although it's also not unusual to be left out of decisions and conversations when you're co-located. It tends to be a little bit more likely in a virtual setting. Some of that has to do with out of sight, out of mind, and are they even thinking about you? But the other has to do with work process. And do you have work processes in place? Are you able to address the time zone issue to be able to resolve that overall? Great. So you seem to have a good handle on some of the aspects of trust in terms of things to look out for and other factors. Let's talk about the 4 factors of trustworthiness and what you can do to build and enhance trust overall. There are 4 elements to trust. The first is credibility. Credibility is your credentials, it's your track record, it's your history of success and wins, but equally as important, and I personally would suggest even more important, is the extent to which people believe you speak the truth. Because even if you're an expert and have great credentials and experience in a certain area, if people believe you are selectively disclosing information, or if they believe you're putting sort of a hyper spin on the positives and downplaying the negative, impacts your credibility. So credibility is expertise, but it's also the perception of speaking the truth. Reliability is the second aspect, and that's fulfilling your commitments. It's the extent to which people perceive you to be dependable. If you make a commitment, make a promise, do you deliver on it? In addition to that, it's the extent to which you're perceived to be predictable. Can people anticipate how you're going to react and respond to a situation? And do they believe you are dependable even in a situation that's not important to you, that's more related to their objectives overall? The next 2 are more related to the interpersonal side of trust as opposed to the task-based side of trust. And this is about intimacy. Intimacy is the extent to which you connect with people in a virtual setting. And here it's about demonstrating discretion. If people ask you to keep a confidence, they can have trust that in fact you will keep that information to yourself. And it's about demonstrating empathy. Empathy is the primary way you connect with people in a virtual world. And empathy here is demonstrating that you understand the other person's situation, that you understand what's going on in their world and why they're acting the way they're acting and saying what they're saying. It doesn't mean you agree with what they're doing. It doesn't mean you feel the same way yourself, but you're basically communicating that you get their situation and understand what's driving them or causing them to act or react in certain ways. It's the way you connect. The last is around orientation. Do you have a high self-orientation, meaning you focus on your needs, your goals, you attend to your priorities? Or do you have a low self-orientation, meaning you attend to the needs and goals of other people? And self-orientation is a critical component of trust. And if you take a look at our trust equation, and we present trust as an equation with self-orientation in the denominator. And here's why. You can be highly credible, expert in your field. People believe you talk straight with them. And reliable. If you say you're going to do something, people believe it will get done. And intimate. People both like you and they believe you understand their world and connect with them. However, if they believe that your focus is primarily on your needs and goals without consideration for theirs, that can have a tremendous negative impact on the perception of your trustworthiness. So what you're trying to do here is build trust on all four pillars. We tend to focus on credibility and reliability as our primary drivers, which is good to do. And in addition, the opportunity is to also focus on connecting with people through discretion and intimacy and identifying shared goals and having a lower self-orientation. So let's take a look at a couple of quick scenarios to see if you can identify which element of trust is missing from this scenario. And with your permission, I'll just sort of read it as you are answering the question. In this scenario, you're a marketing analyst. You've been assigned to work with a sales team that you have never worked with before. The team's objective is to develop a response to a competitor's product that threatens your company's position in the Northeast. During the first conference call, you noticed that the individual team members did not respond to your suggestions with much enthusiasm and frequently questioned your assumptions. Which trust component is missing here? Right? And you've been answering as I've been reading, which is a good thing to do. And at this point, the majority of you have selected credibility. And in fact, that's the correct answer. In this particular case, you don't have much experience with the team. Truthfully, all the factors may be in question, but in this case, because they were questioning your assumptions and not really reacting with great enthusiasm to your ideas, the idea here is they might not have enough information about your background, your experience, to know that you really are, in fact, an expert in this situation. So what can you do to build trust in terms of credibility? The key here is to avoid exaggeration. You should answer direct questions with a direct answer. And although it seems counterintuitive, you should admit when you don't know something. Actually acknowledging that something is not your area of expertise or you don't know about it enhances credibility. There are some people that just, blah, blah, blah. They'll opine and talk about any issue, whether they know something about it or not. No, admitting you don't know something is a way to enhance credibility. Demonstrating expertise by offering to help people builds credibility, but also builds relationships, and partnering people at different locations with other people in other locations And rotating those partnerships gives people an opportunity to get to know each other around their credibility, their expertise, their ability to speak the truth, and it also helps build relationships as well. Here's our next scenario. This is you and Dan are colleagues on a cross-functional team. Previously, when you and Dan were working on a project together, you found that due to competing priorities, you were not able to deliver what you promised. Now you have to collaborate with Dan again on an important project, and you're concerned that he really doesn't trust you to do your part. Which component has been damaged in this scenario? All right. It looks like the majority of you have reliability. There's a couple people that have self-orientation, and again, although in this case it is reliability, those of you who pick self-orientation may not be that far off, because here you could be demonstrating my objective is more important than your objective. So I definitely, those of you who pick self-orientation, you should get credit for that response. It's actually a good answer. Strictly speaking, or more directly, it's about reliability and being able to deliver, although self-orientation can be the cause. So you can see the relationship between the two. So what can you do to build reliability? Here, the key is make smaller promises. Rather than commit to one big deliverable, commit to key milestones along the way so you can have more opportunities to demonstrate your ability to deliver on your commitments. You should also make your process visible and consistent so people can anticipate and predict how you're going to go at it. Use the language that other people use, and a highly underutilized tool is the action plan. Action plans are basically contracts. They document agreements in terms of who's going to do what and when. And by putting an action plan in place to clarify expectations and posting that on a shared space, everybody sees it, everybody knows who's supposed to do what. It increases people's ability to fulfill their commitments and their desire, because they know everybody knows. And the other is, in a virtual setting, if I cannot see you working, I'm positive you are not working. So the extent to which you can make your work visible, posting on shared sites. I work with two clients. Interestingly enough, they're very different. One is in retail and one is insurance, where they inspect boilers. Both of them use a similar technique where they ask people in the field to take a picture of either the end cap in the retail side or the boiler that was just inspected. It's a way to see the quality of the work, but also to confirm that it's been done. So there's some techniques where you can make work visible. And let's see the third scenario. And Brittany, if you clear that poll, please. In this scenario, you're a telecommuter and you're only in the office one day a week. And because you're not co-located with your team members, you primarily use email to communicate with them. In addition, because people are very busy, you try to keep your emails brief and focused on the issue or problem at hand. You believe people appreciate that you don't waste their time with frivolous, non-work or personal conversations. What trust components should you work on here? And people have started to answer. Let's see where you are with that. Okay. So far, the majority have intimacy, couple on the self-orientation. Okay, let's see where we are. Okay, so the majority of you have picked intimacy. Once again, those of you who pick self-orientation, you should get credit for it, because high self-orientation may cause you to just focus on your needs and goals and not connect with other people. I think that's legitimate. But in this case, the thing you need to work on primarily is connecting with others and this idea of intimacy and connecting. So One way to do it is set up a team page, use an intranet, sort of like a Facebook-like page where team members can share more personal information. We talked about the importance of demonstrating empathy and how that lets you connect. Calling to have non-work conversations. This seems counterintuitive. I know when I say it to you, it sounds crazy. Who has time just to talk, to call, to chit-chat? But when you are co-located, you'll frequently walk into someone's work area, see them at the coffee break, in the hallway, and you'll chat. You'll chat about the commute into work. You'll chat about the weather, a sporting event, a daughter or son's graduation. And what you're trying to do here is replicate what you would do in a face-to-face setting and replicate that in a virtual setting. There's a lot of research that's been done on the impact of technology as an intermediary between people, but you can overcome that and connect with people as you would if you were co-located, right? You can schedule virtual coffee chats and lunches with the whole team, and whenever possible, try to meet face-to-face. Even one face-to-face meeting lays the foundation for a much more effective interaction, for building relationships, and for building trust. And if you work on a global basis, there are many cultures that would find your effort to try to meet face-to-face as a great sign of respect and really go a long way to building that connection. So here's the last scenario overall. And as a, Brittany, if you could clear that, please. As a member of a cross-functional team, you're focused on meeting your commitments. You freely raise issues that affect your area of responsibility. You call other team members to ask for help to ensure the timely completion of your tasks. However, you recently had a conversation with Ann, who's the team leader, and although Ann praised you for the work you do, she mentioned that other team members perceive that you are primarily focused on your priorities, pay little attention to the needs and objectives of others. Which trust component has been damaged here? And all right, looks like everybody, and if you're kind of tracking through, this is the one that's left. Yes, it is self-orientation. Reliability is kind of in there a bit, but this is really about you focusing on your goals, not on others. It impacts reliability, absolutely, but it tends to be much more around self-orientation. And a high self-orientation can have 3 times the impact of any of the other factors. So it really is something to watch out for. Some keys, some tips for building and enhancing the perception of your low self-orientation. Try not to interrupt people when they're talking. Give them the time. Really listen. Focus on shared goals. The more you have common ground, the more you have some kind of shared goal. It's no longer my goal versus your goal. It's our goal overall. Get clear about what's important to other, and remember, it's not always about you. Sometimes the other person's goal and objective is just as important as your goal and objective, and maybe even more so. So give them attention, and maybe yours should follow through after. So in addition to these 4 different factors, there's your trust temperament. These 4 factors come together in a trust temperament. And basically what this is the primary way you go about engaging with others and interacting with others to build trust. And it's usually made up of your 2 primary factors, the two you focus on the most. So if you focus on credibility and reliability, like 31% of the general population do, you'd be the expert. If you focus on intimacy and low self-orientation, you'd be more the connector, and that's about 13% of the population overall. So I'm going to describe the characteristics of each one of these trust temperaments, and as I do that, I'm going to ask you to identify which one you think reflects your trust temperament most closely. All right? So the first is high credibility, high reliability, and this is the expert, where you are most focused on what others think about your work. You're particularly good at mastering your subject, keeping commitments, and prioritizing. The thing you have to watch out for is coming across as arrogant. The next is the catalyst, high credibility, high intimacy. What you care about the most are framing big issues, problems, and gaining insights. Your strengths are on facilitating and eliciting ideas from others and translating that into action. The thing you need to watch out for is not following through on your promises. The third is the professor. This is high credibility and low self-orientation. You focus most on your clients or your customers or your colleagues, their success, and sharing ideas with them. Your area of strength and what you're best at is contributing new original thoughts and insights and exploring ideas. The area you need to be most cautious and watch out for is around missing deadlines. Next is the doer, high reliability and high intimacy. Your focus is on getting work done, and you're particularly good at staying on track and working, making things happen, and motivating others to stay on track and make things happen. The area you need to watch out for is focusing on the detail and not seeing the big picture. Next is the steward, where you have high reliability and a low self-orientation. You're all about fulfilling the mission and taking care of the organization. Your area of strength and your focus is on achieving your goals by helping other people achieve theirs. The thing you need to watch out for, your blind spot or your potential weakness, is being perceived as not being ambitious or not being vocal. And the last is the connector. This is high intimacy, low self-orientation. You care most about other people. Your area of strength, what you're particularly good at, is listening and accomplishing things through others. The area you need to watch out for and augment if you can is failing to establish credibility overall. So let's see what you've got here in terms of trust temperaments. We've seen it shift a little bit. Not unusual to see a fairly even distribution in a group this size, but it tends to be lower on the steward and the connector, which I think is about right. The expert and the catalyst tend to be the two highest in general, in the general population. Again, we put a lot of emphasis on reliability. Even above, in terms of the four, reliability is the one that most people focus on in terms of building trust. So the overall message here is to basically build trust on all four pillars. Even you're good at a couple things now, but to focus on other areas as well. So the area of opportunity, as we've been saying, is on the interpersonal side. Credibility, reliability are strong. Many of us focus on that. To also include the intimacy side and the self-orientation side. So in terms of the process for creating trust, in addition to your style or your preference, there are also key steps that you can follow. And the first is about engaging people, starting the conversation, offering something of value in an open discussion about issues that are key to the other person, whether they're a colleague, a customer, or a client. And then the next component is about listening to what's important to the other person. What listening does is you earn the right to offer a solution. So you want to make sure you're engaging and listening before you start to offer solutions. And then it's about framing the issue, talking about what's true, the root issue, taking personal risks to explore the issue in depth and to really articulate a point of view. And from there, it's around envisioning in terms of jointly envisioning an alternative, a future state that also includes the emotional side, right, the inspirational side. And then there's the commit, jointly committing to some constructive action that implies movement on the part of both people. Now, there's not necessarily a strict order here in terms of doing them all, but as I said, you want to do, if you do framing and try to go to commitment without doing the listening first, the trust process tends to freeze. It tends to kind of stall. So one of the most important but the least practiced aspect of trust is this whole idea of listening followed by the envision side of things. So this whole trust is about the power of reciprocity. If you listen to me, I'll listen to you. If you don't listen to me, I don't listen to you, and that's where building trust starts to freeze and stall right away. Here's a quote from Thomas Friedman. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's a columnist, journalist. He tends to write with the New York Times, but you see him on television quite a bit. Here's his comment on listening and the importance of listening and the impact of listening. People often ask me how I, as an American Jew, have been able to operate in the Arab Muslim world for 20 years. And my answer to them is always the same. The secret is to be a good listener. It's never failed me. The most important part of listening is that it's a sign of respect. It's not just what you hear by listening that's important. It's what you say by listening that's important. And again, this goes back to the intimacy side of trust. It goes back to the credibility side of trust. And it goes back to the self-orientation side of trust as well. So, just to be clear and specific, trust is heavily non-rational. It's as much the feeling as it is the logic of it. It works partly through reciprocity, the give and take. Reciprocity in business happens in conversations, and listening, in particular your listening, is what drives trust overall. So let me take a moment to ask you folks what you're going to do different. We're coming toward the end of our presentation. I have a couple of closing words, but before I do a quick little summary, if you would go to the polling question that's available to you there, and just what would you do differently based on what we talked about to be able to build trust? And I'll just say a couple of words, and then we'll check in and see what people are putting there. So in terms of best practice, as a member of a virtual team or a leader of a virtual team, you need to be proactive and provide opportunities to build relationships and to learn about other people's capabilities. Either you individually have to reach out in a proactive way. It doesn't happen spontaneously and informally like it does when you're co-located, and many people will not initiate. You must do that. Build in ways for people to connect. You also want to make sure you have ground rules that focus on confidentiality in terms of how like what we talk about in our meetings stays in our meetings overall. You want to create opportunities for people to interact, and here's where you can leverage technology, idea boards on shared spaces, instant messaging, chatting, phone calls, collaborative software are all ways to help people engage and interact. Ensure that information is being shared, that everyone is getting what they need. Again, processes to make sure that you're being inclusive in this regard. You want to promote accountability, which goes directly at reliability. And in the virtual world, there's a concept called social loafing. If I don't believe you can see me work, or I don't believe you can connect my effort to the team outcome, I tend to put in less effort and take less accountability. As a team leader or a team member, you need to really focus on transparency and ensuring that everyone knows who's accountable for what, and holding people accountable goes directly at reliability and people's confidence in other people's ability to deliver on promises. Make sure you make it safe for people to raise issues and concerns so you get early warning before there's a problem. Make it the norm to raise the concern rather than waiting to the last minute. And in a virtual setting, it's very easy to avoid conflicts and let them fester. Sometimes you might not even know the conflict is happening. You want to make sure that you are engaging people and encouraging them to deal with conflicts in a constructive way. When conflicts are managed well, that tends to actually enhance trust overall. So let's just see a couple of things that you folks have put in. Minimal use of email, using phone and video, minimizing email. Email seems like it's an efficient way to talk to people and communicate, but it actually does not. It's good for just, confirming or sending information, but it's not good for building relationships. Events, organizing virtual events, virtual meetings with your people, great idea. Taking advantage of technology in that regard, very good. I see a general theme around more video, more listening, good. And by the way, listening is key. Good listening is important in any relationship, but it's particularly important in a virtual setting where paraphrasing, empathizing is nice to do in a face-to-face setting. It is essential in a virtual setting. So, again, I want to thank you all very much for attending this session. I look forward to having you attend other sessions as well. On the bottom, you'll see a couple of links that we have for you to learn more about MeetingOne, to get to know a little bit more about OnPoint and what we do and our services. And your feedback on today's session would be greatly appreciated. You also have a couple of takeaways, an ebook on 5 trends impacting virtual teams, and you can also get the copy of the slides. So everyone, thank you very much. I'm going to stay on the line in case there are any questions coming forward, but thank you all for coming. It looks like there are a couple of questions. One is around, do you think that webcams can help with the lack of face-to-face interaction? Absolutely. Webcams are the best way, and collaborative software is the best way to get at the lack of visual cues and to help you connect with other people. It's perfect. Another question is, have you discovered a correlation between the trust temperament and other assessors like this? Yeah, that's actually a very good question. There's no studies have been done on that, but if you're interested in more information on this trust quotient, a lot of the work, or all the work done on the trust quotient, was done by a gentleman named Charles Green, and he has a website, Trusted Advisors. And if you go to his website, you'll see a great deal of information on trust, building trust, and the factors. So you may find something there as well. And the next question I have is, how would you handle a team member if they have clearly been caught in a lie? Yeah, well, that's difficult. I guess the first thing is making sure you have your facts straight. And for me, it would be like any, if it's a colleague and not a direct report, it would be like, if it's a direct report, it would be like any coaching interaction. If it's a colleague, the key is to make sure you have your facts straight and not working from assumptions, and then raise the issue. And of course, I wouldn't necessarily start by saying you lied, but I would say there seems to be a difference in terms of what you said and what happened, or what you said and what I expected, and just to talk a little bit about it in a conflict management sort of way, trying to minimize the accusation and the labeling, because that'll probably just cause people to get better, more entrenched and just try to defend their point of view. Right now, that looks like all the questions that I see. Any others? Oh, here's one more. Thanks. The website again. The name of the company is Trusted Advisors. So it's trustedadvisors.com. try different spellings to see if you get it. My spelling's not very good. Another question is, how do you rebuild trust on a team when the previous lead was not trustworthy? Right. Well, yeah, and build conflict and distrust. Yeah, that's going to be, again, that's your challenge. The idea here is you're trying to sort of reshape the culture of that team and help them see that you're not that previous person. And it's difficult, if you've been, gun shy, or if you've been, pinpricked a number of times, you'll start to be, dubious about anyone. So the main thing, again, is I'd focus on those 4 elements. I'd make sure that you were establishing credibility primarily from sharing information and focusing on the truth, being reliable in terms of helping them see your process and being dependable, doing what you say kind of thing. The intimacy is around just connecting, demonstrating empathy in terms of their situation, both previous and current, and the shared goals and the lower self-orientation. The thing to remember is that it's going to take time. In other words, they're going to need to see you demonstrate those behaviors consistently over a period of time, and gradually you'll be able to win them over. But 1 time, 2 times, 3 times might not be sufficient to really get some of the people who have been more damaged, so it has to be consistent overall. And here's another one. How do you deal with the different cultural aspects of the meaning of trust? Well, actually, that's a very good question. This model really is multicultural. It's not just a U.S.-centric model. So the idea of what does it take to be able to be seen as trustworthy by others, I think would still be built on these 4 pillars. In other words, do you tell the truth? Are you dependable? Do you understand my situation? And do you share my goals? I think those are fairly universal. I need an example, a little more of an example of another way to define trust in another culture, but I think those 4 things really do capture what it means to be trustworthy. Some may be emphasized more than others, but the 4 of them together tend to really drive that perception. Okay, that looks like all the questions.